Alright guys, welcome to this video. As you can see, there's a cat in the way, but we're gonna try and get started here. Alright, so I want to talk about Micah Beckwith and a lot of the ideas that he has, and how they're kind of pretty silly. I'm going to go over why, pick apart at the ideas because I think that's important. So anyways, let's maybe get started here. What do you think, Twilight? Are you going to be leaving soon? Anyways, let's go to the next part here and we can play this video and see what he thinks.
It's this covetousness kind of spirit that then gets locked into everybody's, purview. And then it's like, well, you have that, I don't. That means we're enemies now. And I think that's what Governor Braun, what the administration, what Donald Trump is trying to fight against. Say, hey, we're all Americans. We're all Hoosiers. We all want equal opportunity, and we want the ability to be able to make something better for ourselves. So that's what that executive order was all about.
There's so many more questions.
So it's the idea of covetousness coming out of DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. So why would he think that it causes covetousness? In a little clip I talked about, somebody who's a slave wanting to be free covets what his master has. He wants to have that. Similarly, there are historical differences as far as the things that people have access to. While under the law, people are equal to a certain extent, but there is a peeling away of the VRA, which Beckwith agrees with. He loves to peel away at the VRA, or Voting Rights Act, but he thinks that basically any attempt to address those historical setbacks is something that shouldn't happen. It causes division to help people be more equal, to help those who don't have as much as others to start. Just like a simple example is school districts, where the amount of money that goes into the schools has to do with the amount of tax revenue in that community. Now that's not fair. So you have the schools being funded, say in a poorer community, and therefore they don't get funded as well. Therefore they don't get as quality of education. So they're perpetually in this area and not able to raise children with good education to start. So the poverty that they started with will cause them to be impoverished further because they don't have that education that sets them up for a good job. And there are other examples of this, of course, but let's go ahead and actually move on to his interview with Senator Greg Taylor, also a legislator of Indiana. I want to hear a bit of what he has to say here. So we're going to go back. I'm not sure how far I need to go back for this one, but we're going to go ahead and jump in right now. Let's see what he says.
What about the Dietrich Bonhoeffers in Germany at the time, who would stand up, there's one versus a million, and he says, this is wrong because...
And
why?
Now we have...
Because why?
Right. So, and that's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. You hear that person's experiences.
But somebody has to be the one that ultimately gets to decide what's included.
During that time in Germany, it was the alt-right that got to decide.
The alt-right. Oh my gosh. Hitler was a socialist. He was on the left. He was not an alt-right person.
Okay.
It's the Socialist Party. Nazi Party was known as the Socialist Party of Germany. Let me say, the people who wrote the history book said that he was alt-right.
Yes. So
okay. Well, if you look at
okay. First of all, let's just stop right there. Because the fact is that Hitler knew the sentiment of the time, that there was an economic crisis and people were having a hard time because of that. So what he had to do was co-opt the term socialism, put it into his political party, the National Socialist, in German, whatever. He co-opted the term. And so, after he was actually elected, he threw out that union representation. He threw out the communists. He got, obviously, he wasn't a socialist. He started to enable corporations over the worker power, and that's really the opposite of socialism. So that's one thing. Let's move on to see what else he says, because he says something else just as stupid.
Socialism, that's what they were. They were socialists. So
I don't want to get into Hitler. I don't think that's what. But what we are here to talk about is the inclusion thing that confuses you. It doesn't confuse me. I may be.
I'm not confused. I'm just trying to make a point. And
No. You said.
He is confused. He thinks that so what he keeps on asking is, who's going to be the arbiter of what's going to be included? The people will be in charge of who is included. You're going to have a lot of people saying their opinions on something, and then what happens is they listen, and then they come to a conclusion. Now, in his perfect society, everyone is rightful thinking, and they are operating in the ways of Jesus. They don't care about, Muslims or Jewish, or they are, say, what group did Trump just call out in Minnesota? He called out a certain group of people and said we should get rid of all of them. What he's talking about, what culture should and should not be acceptable. In one hand, he's saying we're against inclusion because we are afraid of what will be included. Okay. And what he's replacing with that is we only want to include certain types of people, certain types of understanding. After he says this inclusion is bad, we need to make sure that only this type of understanding is in the conversation. That's essentially what's going on here. We don't want inclusion, we want exclusion of certain ideas. And that's, where does he go with that? Let's continue on.
Saying who gets to decide if it's right.
I think I know the answer to that, by the way.
What is it?
I think it's what our founders went back to, the laws of nature and nature's God, right? There's truth in the laws of nature and nature's God. Therefore, that's who's the arbiter of truth is.
Really?
The four times God is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. Why would they do that? Because they said, hey, my truth, your truth doesn't really matter. What does the God of nature and the God of this nation say?
Well, the God of this nation, during the time they wrote the Declaration of Independence, would have been disappointed in what they were doing.
Oh, 100%. And even slavery was a thing for thousands of years.
You brought it up.
We were the first nation to ban this. Well, you want to go back and say, well, they were slave owners, therefore.
You didn't let me finish. You didn't let me finish.
God would not be okay with that.
Let me finish. The God would not be okay with what our founding fathers thought at the time, but what our founding fathers were smart enough to do is to say that over time, we need to allow this country to grow.
100%.
And to grow in a manner.
A more perfect
union.
Yeah.
And if you believe that we have grown to that point today, then you're sadly mistaken.
I'm sadly mistaken.
Absolutely.
I was going to say,
Let me give you some facts. Let me give you some facts.
Yes. Please. I like facts.
Yes, I do too. You do agree that women and people of color didn't have a right to vote in this country until 1965.
Yes. Yep.
So the fact is, we've been voting for 60 years.
Well, in some places, because a black man could run for office in Massachusetts even before the founding.
I didn't say run for office.
There have been, John Hancock was great friends with one of the wealthiest black, merchants.
What does that got to do with the fact is we didn't get to vote. We only been voting for 60 years.
He
tries to derail the argument that African Americans have only been able to vote for 60 years by going back and saying that people could be elected to office. Yeah, that's great, but sheesh. It's just trying to derail the point, trying to get rid of that argument, run away from that truth. Let's continue on.
Inherently in that Constitution, the most important thing that they knew was going to be the right to vote.
Okay.
We didn't even achieve that until 1965.
Sure.
So we are already behind. Women and minorities are behind the 8 ball. So 65 years later, we are now at the point where we're sitting here trying to determine whether or not you and I being in the same room through an inclusion thing is good. See,
he brings up obviously a great point. They've only been able to vote, women and African Americans, for 60 years. Or maybe it was only African Americans. I could look at the law. I'll put up some actual history up here. And but either way, their actual ability to vote for people who will represent them has not been around for very long. So how can we expect the institutions of power to actually be working for them? Or instead, they are actually working against them, working with some other people group who maybe has been in power for a while longer, because African Americans, women have been here the whole time, but just not represented.
our country was built on separation, going back to the time when race was created, because God didn't create it, man created it.
Man created race?
Yes.
Well,
Bacon's Rebellion, remember?
Listen,
the elite, the working.
The Bible says that God created us and formed us from dust.
Okay, so Beckwith does not have a historical understanding of what race is, of how that actually came about. He is not looking at, that period of time where people were looking at skull shapes and skin color and cultures and determining who was the superior race. It was a construction that people created in order to justify a power structure that they wanted, that benefited them. And it benefited America to make African Americans the lowest caste on that societal structure, so that they could justify the enslavement of those people, so that they could justify that they are not allowed to vote, not allowed to be represented. That's what Mr. Greg Taylor, Senator Greg Taylor, is talking about. Beckwith then just goes, the Bible says this, though. There's no historical understanding. Absolutely no historical understanding. I'm going to just look at the Bible. I'm not going to actually engage with history. The Bible, it's a document. It's something that can be looked at, but you have to understand things that are also not the Bible. There's the Bible, and there's also the entire human history, which is important to account for. Let's go ahead and listen to Beckwith a little bit more.
There's five.
But God didn't create race. He created us, but He didn't create race.
But we're all made in the image of God. That the amount of melanin in your
That's
your
right.
body, your skin is
based on where you were born.
That's right. Based on
So,
the mating patterns of your ancestors.
Closer to the equator, you had sun.
That's right.
But God didn't create that. That was created by man to separate the working class.
That'd be like saying God created the wolf, but He didn't create the boxer.
Yes. No. Okay. He does not understand what Greg is saying, or he's trying to be actually disingenuous on what Greg is actually saying. Because Greg is just saying, people did this historically. Beckwith is saying, well, it's also God. God's doing everything. Okay, he's interjecting God into everything. We understand that over the course of history that God has a hand in all the things moving forward and what's going on, and he's working through these things. Okay, fine, but that doesn't change the fact that it is not people who did that historically. They did that whether they are guided by God or whether we state it in a way in which they are not. God would move it in his worldview of reality no matter what. So it's an unnecessary undercutting of Greg's point just to cut him down.
Like the Labrador.
He didn't.
Yes, he did. He created
the dogs.
You're going to say
mating.
man create? Okay, but here's the deal. You're giving credit to man for being the creator of something. It can morph things. It can't create things. Like you're saying man created the Labrador. I'm saying God created the dog.
Man is still creating breeds of dogs.
God created the dog. Man is taking that and changing and more.
Just like this, right? So God created man.
Okay.
And then man took that and created race.
Yeah. Could you not say God's hand was in the forming of that?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine. We'll give God's hands in the elite class trying to take over the work.
There we go. All right.
No, we'll accept that. But man created race. And in doing so, they created a distinction between people. It was created to separate. And we have to...
I don't know about that because...
Look up Bacon's Rebellion.
Every race has been...
He will not look up Bacon's Rebellion. Why don't we just look up Bacon's Rebellion and see what Greg Taylor's talking about? Bacon's Rebellion. Here it is. It comes up. Bacon's Rebellion was an armed uprising in colonial Virginia from 1676 to 1677, led by Nathaniel Bacon against the rule of Governor William Berkeley. It was fueled by economic hardship, high taxes, low tobacco prices, conflict with Native Americans, leading to a rebellion that included attacking both native tribes and Jamestown itself. The rebellion was ultimately suppressed after Bacon's death, but it had lasting effects, contributing to a shift towards African slave labor and the implementation of laws creating a racial divide. It says it right there. If he looked into the history, he would know what Greg Taylor is trying to educate Micah about. But instead, he has to circle back to some talking points that he likes very dearly.
Enslaved and separated out throughout all history.
I understand that.
Right?
I understand that.
White, black, brown, red, yellow.
But it wasn't based on race.
He has to go way back in time and say, everyone was a slave. Who cares? Everyone was a slave. What do you mean? You know, it's fine that there was slavery. That's essentially what he's saying. He says, big whoop about what the original founders of this country did to African Americans. He's saying, big whoop. It happened somewhere else. Wow. Okay.
I think it was based on tribalism. I think it was based on culture. I think it could have been based on race. I think cultures would recognize that person.
Based on race.
That person looks differently
You know
differently
as well
than
as
me.
I do.
No. That person looks differently than me. They're in a different culture or tribe. We don't want them.
Before slave trade, it was not based on the skin color. And you know that as well as I do. It was based on, first it was when you conquered a country,
Sure.
you took them in as slaves.
Absolutely.
And what you did is you took those countries and you took all of their assets and you took them away from the people who had them.
Yeah.
And you had to create a way to keep them in servitude. So you did things like use the size of their hands or the bigness of their eyes or the roundness of their nose to determine what they were. It was never race.
What I just said. Well, that's what
it was never race. And until we created that as man, with, as you say, with God's, They're not saying God
God's
liked
hand was in it. God, we'll say that. Yeah,
he
yeah.
lets us sin.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus was here.
Yep.
The bottom line is we have to understand that creation is man-made. So if it's man-made, then we have to recognize that there was a reason for it. And the reason was to separate us. Inclusion kind of counteracts that. And what I'm saying to you is, if we leave that out, our children are going to be the one to suffer more.
And I'm not saying that including people into the process is a bad thing. I'm saying who gets to decide what gets included, because every culture, every society.
Was any of the things that he is fear-mongering about happening when DEI existed?
Whoever's in charge at the time. Look, Brown versus
Super dangerous.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And Brown versus Board of Education is a perfect example. They start shipping these black kids to white schools because they were better.
I get it.
And at the time, when we had all these black schools and all these black teachers who were doing very well, the society said, "No, that ain't working."
But who's ever in charge is basically saying that government is in charge of our God-given rights. And we know government isn't the one who gives us those God-given rights. It's not government's job to give it and take away. It's government's job to protect them and secure them.
Well, here's what I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we can agree upon is that you and I knowing each other has enlightened us.
I think he does it at a separate point where he talks about some crazy thing, like Nazis. He says, so we're going to let a Nazi to the table. And you know what? Republicans these days, they do have that within their party. And everyone knows it now. They have open Nazis, with the text message leaks that have been coming out. And that's with DEI being removed. Okay, so that's interesting. Let's just think about, let's ponder about why that is. Though at the same time, I don't think it would make a difference, because it's just what the Republican Party is. It is people who have beliefs that align with preserving the existing power structure, which happens to be majority. It is preserving the existing power structure and trying to make sure that actual merit doesn't take place. That people who should be represented are not represented. It's not an equal society, but it is a society that they want to only be run by white Christian nationalists. That's what the Republican Party has become. And whether you know that or not, that's what it is. And one can hold ideas that are tangential to that fact and not really know, that they're supporting white supremacy or whatever, right? But regardless of that, they are.
About differences. And how
for sure. Yeah.
What we need is to understand that is purely the objective of DEI. I think different sides of the aisle have different ideas about what DEI does. And we have to come to the understanding that even though we're in power, doesn't make us right.
But if DEI works, then it has to work everywhere, correct?
No.
DEI doesn't work everywhere.
Name one thing that works everywhere every time you from a public policy
from a philosophy, I can say liberty for all works everywhere.
Liberty for all?
Yes, it works everywhere.
That's really funny. Liberty for all. Liberty or freedom. Freedom of choice, like pro-choice. Is that what he means? No, that's not what he means. What the heck does he actually mean? What is it? Liberty to say whatever you want? Liberty to say slurs? I mean, that's what Republicans always go to. They want to be able to say things that are horrible. What is his liberty? Is it guns so that people can continue to go shoot up schools? Is that your liberty, Beckwith? The death of children? I want the liberty to have my gun and also not have restrictive gun laws so that another guy can have the liberty to go shoot up a school. That's my kind of liberty.
Where you apply it, and I would say the outcome works every time. Doesn't matter if you're white, brown, black, green, yellow.
Since when? Because I just told you
liberty for all.
Liberty was,
I'm saying the philosophy.
Oh, okay.
Like if you apply that philosophy, we know from our experience that it works.
Yeah.
Okay, so DEI is a philosophy, is it not?
Yes.
I would ask the same question. If it's a good philosophy, it will work everywhere. So does
Right.
DEI work in the NBA?
Absolutely.
It does. So I'm saying I want to see a quota that however many black people,
Wrong,
white people.
Wrong. DEI is not a quota.
Okay, well, some people make it a quota.
No, they don't, and that's the problem.
So that's okay.
That's the
so
problem.
you're against that aspect of DEI.
There is nothing in DEI that's a quota.
Well, some people have turned it into that then. And I'm not saying you're responsible for what other people do with philosophy, but
listen,
Yeah.
okay, I'll give you permission. You brought
but
up
does
the
it
NBA.
work in the NBA? Answer that question.
Yes, it works
How?
in the NBA.
How?
Because you wouldn't have black coaches if DEI wasn't there.
But the players, like, okay, I
Whoa,
look at the players,
Wait,
and I'm just saying, hey,
players is based on athletic talent.
oh, so that's merit. So that we do merit for the players, but not.
Look at how he switches this up to merit. The assumption is that is that essentially DEI makes it so that people are not being hired on merit, but that is absolutely not the case. The case is that people are looking for people with a certain amount of qualifications. They will look at both those individuals, and if this individual has the same amount of qualifications as someone else who is a majority group, say there's a white person and an African American person, they both have the same qualifications. They will choose the African American so that they diversify, so that they include more types of people, more, not just types of people, but different perspectives, because that is diversity and that is a strength. Micah believes similarly to Charlie Kirk that when he looks at a African American pilot, he says, oh, they lowered the qualifications for this guy to get in. It's just completely not true. It's not true, and it just is racist. That's what it is. It's racism.
Not for
what?
Other?
No.
I'm just trying to find.
Remember,
Yeah.
DEI doesn't exclude
you want a
merit.
meritocracy
No,
for the players.
No. You're not listen.
And
you're
listen,
not going to change
if
our word.
DEI makes it so that society is more meritocratic. Beckwith doesn't get that.
Let me tell you something. There are more qualified black coaches in this country than there should. Listen, if you want to say that having a black coach who's not qualified, I agree with you. That's not what DEI is. DEI says if you're looking at two individuals and they both have the same credentials, then the person who provides that equity, diversity, inclusion
gets the nod. Okay.
You're flipping it, saying, oh, because we want to have a black coach, we just go get any coach that we want to get.
No, I'm saying I'm saying get the best coach. The goal.
Anyways, he's not actually changing his mind. Let's move on. Let's see, what's this one?
Here's 3 reasons why you.
This is Mr. Beckwith and his Christian nationalism. He basically wants for the government to be run by Christian law. He wants a Christian caliphate when simultaneously the Republican Party is so scared of Mamdani because they believe that they're going to implement Sharia law. But they'll allow Christian law, which, who knows? The Bible talks about suppression of women, that they should follow their husband, that they should do as they say, all types of things that suppress people, just as much as Islam in a fundamentalist way can suppress people. How can they fear one thing and not the other? Because one thing is their preference.
You should be a Christian nationalist. Jesus, first of all,
I don't think he really understands the implication of what he's saying.
said, go out and make disciples of all nations. Nations are boundaries, borders, constitutions.
We're going to make disciples of all nations, so we must conquer them. We must make sure that they are Christian. So now he's going to a sort of crusader type of ideology. That's great to know.
Nations are what we have. We have been given something to steward, and that is the nation. Number two, Jesus said, on this rock I will build my ecclesia. The ecclesia was not the synagogue, it wasn't the temple. We've translated it to church, but that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said the ecclesia, which is the Greek city center. It was the town public square where all the politics happened. He said, you're going to take the gospel, you're going to go into the public square, and you're going to revolutionize and reform the government.
Also, Jesus said, give Caesar unto Caesar and give God unto God. One could argue that Jesus was saying there's a separation between church and state. He didn't bring that up. I don't know why. That's
And
interesting.
out of that will be good boundaries that will be placed in society, and we will see the gospel flourish because of that. And then number three, there's a long list of traditions of great biblical characters, both in the scripture, but then also even in our history, traditions of godly people, God-fearing people getting involved in politics. You have Daniel, you have Esther, you have David, you have Solomon. So you have a job to be a Christian nationalist. God is calling you to steward your nation. So take that mantle, take that responsibility, and walk boldly in it.
I'm not going to dip into
They get harder and
those
harder.
characters. We're just going to move on to some of his other words.
Indiana specifically, I see if you look at the Republican ticket versus the Democrat ticket, it's strength and godly boldness versus just, I would say, the Jezebel spirit and just this idea of no boldness, right? This or boldness for immorality, right?
You said the word Jezebel spirit, and that's what we're seeing in a lot of these things that are taking place. A lot of the ideology and a lot of the policies and so forth are ultimately about control, which is.
He's saying, no, he's not saying that Republicans' policies are about control, which is the case. It's about Democrat policies that are about control. Sure, Democrats want to make sure that the economy doesn't run over its constituents and leave them bankrupt and leave them without a pension and make sure that they are not paid a decent living wage. But yeah, we're about controlling those institutions so that the people can flourish. It is the policy of Republicans to want to control women's bodies, to control their choice. And it's really an economic decision. How harmful it is for somebody's, if, say, a woman is going to college and she goes to a party and, let's say it's consensual, but she had a few drinks and it happened, but she doesn't notice until it's too late. It's 5 weeks in or 15 weeks in, whatever the ban is in Indiana, and now she's not able to get an abortion. She has to quit school. She has to give up on her college degree because it became too hard, because she does not have the choice to continue while the male has the choice to either help her or just leave. Whether he leaves or whether he goes, it's going to be a hardship on the woman, but the man has a choice to completely leave, and that's not something that they care about. They don't care about the choice and the harm that can happen to one's life to a woman, because they can't fathom what that could be like. Or they think, oh well, she shouldn't have done that, and she made bad choices, so she can't doesn't matter. Well, the man also made a bad choice, and you aren't going to put in law to make sure that the man faces consequences as well. But either way, nuts. So next, let's go ahead and look into what he is being investigated right now for, where Beckwith is being investigated for a couple things. Let me go back up to the top for this. Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith's office investigated by a grand jury for ghost employment allegations, allegedly. The testimony also related to an investigation into the distribution of an intimate image. It's not just an image, it is a video of a topless woman who is the wife of a fellow legislator. There are two legislators who attest to what they saw. So Beckwith claims that they didn't see that, but two legislators claim that, well, yeah, we saw it. So the Marion Prosecutor's Office recently confirmed that a grand jury investigation into ghost employment is ongoing at the Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith's office. Ghost employment is defined as a rule barring employees from doing work outside of their official duties while on the clock. Official court documents reveal the grand jury heard testimony August 18th and September 30th of 2025. The testimony also related to an investigation into the distribution of an intimate image within the office, according to court records. Our partners at the Capitol Chronicle report that prosecutors were looking into this intimate image claim and learned there was an alleged fake topless video of a Republican lawmaker's wife. Two members of Beckwith's staff. Just step back. It's Beckwith's staff that are saying this. So, do you think he's hiring people who like him, who, generally kind of agree with him? Yeah, of course. You want to get along with the people who you work with. And it is two members of Beckwith's staff saw the video in the office back in April. Beckwith denies the claims and says his office has gone about the situation legally. Notice the wording there. What situation is he even talking about? So there was something. What is the situation? That's not answered here. But this will come out, and if there is enough evidence to charge him with this, he'll have hell to pay for it. So let's go ahead and move on. What else do we got here? We have more details on that case. Let's look at this sneak peek of his views on redistricting.
The Constitution, state Constitution, gives us this authority. Is you see any constitutional hiccup from a state perspective for us to redraw in the middle of a census time? So right now it's not we're doing it not on every 10 years. How do we see that?
10 years isn't anywhere in the Constitution of the state.
All right.
It's tradition.
It's tradition. Okay.
And I'm okay with upholding traditions. Sure. And listen, there's some people that still need to be convinced. Mm-hmm. And I've had lots of conversations, and I'm not angry with people who have perspective. But what I try to do is just communicate with them what I communicated with you is there's not just a want to do this, there's a need. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about power and control, it's about correcting an intentional attack on the systems of government by the Biden administration, namely, but before him, the Obama administration.
Yeah. So, let's just have a look at the maps. Let's have a look at the maps. So we're going to go here, and Indiana redistricting. Let's look at what they have drawn up. And let me ask you if this looks fair. Look at how they disenfranchise this group of voters. Oh, look at that. There's the current distribution. Got a lot of blue in District 1, right? And in 7, Marion County. So, hypothetically, if they were trying to disenfranchise District 1, what would they do? They would have to split it in half and spread it far enough and wide enough so that they could dilute the Democratic voters with Republican rural voters. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at what they did. Oh, there it is. That's exactly what they did. Let's look at this up close. Let's look at this up close here. Can we get this in a new tab? As we can see here, they split up that region. Wasn't that where that blue area was? Yeah. Oh yeah, that is. That's exactly where that blue area was. And now if we look at Marion County, right here, we see that they split it up 4 times in order to dilute the Democratic voters of Indiana, in order to make sure that they have power and control. He says it himself. He doesn't, it's not in the Constitution. It doesn't really matter. We have the power to disenfranchise voters of Indiana. That's what he's doing. It's written in their maps. Sure, it's constitutional, but is it just? That's the question you should ask. Not if it's constitutional, but is it fair? Is it just for the people who you are representing, who you claim to represent? And if you really think about it, if you really have a heart-to-heart with your soul, you know that it's not. Randy Neimeyer, Alex Jones look-alike, and Micah Beckwith, Mike Braun, you know it's not right. Let's move on. His arguments suck. I've listened to it. He talks about how he doesn't like the VRA, which allows for people to be represented, allows for minority-majority districts to be represented in their state, to make sure there is not discrimination against people groups, against races of people. That's what Randy Neimeyer explicitly says in this video. You can watch it yourself. All right, moving on. Let's look at how this redistricting rally went down in Indianapolis. Let's see how much bipartisan support there was for this initiative.
Indiana. Two of the thirstiest bitches to ever exist, Micah Beckwith and Diego Morales, led a real ragtag group of ruffians in a rally for redistricting at the Indiana State House today, Tuesday, November 18th. And I'm using the word rally very loosely because I don't know what the number limits are for rally, but I'm pretty sure 11 does not qualify as a rally. This is not even a crowd. Maybe it's a group, a small gathering, or a hang. This small group project is being led by Trump fanboys Micah Beckwith and Diego Morales, clad in their Indiana 9-0 merch, making the same argument they have been making for months to support this election cheating nonsense. Their only argument is, well, California did it. Beckwith even claims there is bipartisan support for this. No, dumbass, there's not. There is not bipartisan support to redraw Indiana's maps. There is a bipartisan consensus that gerrymandering is bad and it suppresses the vote, but that's a different conversation. If y'all want to have that conversation, then let's have it. But that's not what is happening here. What is happening here is an acute emergency where the president is infiltrating Indiana and trying to control our elections. You know, the antithesis of states' rights.
Then she goes on to say, obviously, it's a federal push from Trump. This isn't states' rights. It's states' rights when it's convenient to perpetuating the power of Republicans in their state. That's what it is. And they're mad that California has the balls to fight back against what Texas did, against what Texas tried to do, okay? And it could very well be the case that California's, attempt using Prop 50 will be struck down in Supreme Court, and none of this will actually pass. But anyways, still, like she says, gerrymandering is not popular. It is not a bipartisan idea or thing or practice at all. Diego Morales is his own problem and is all on his own, which, he was covered in the last video. In the last episode of Unscripted with Daniel, he is the worst Secretary of State. Nepotism. We're just going to leave it at that. Okay. Now, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the horrible ideas of Micah Beckwith. And, have a good time. And I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. And I'll bring more content to the table for these Indiana Hoosiers that are still hopeful for the future of democracy in our state. And my cat came here to say goodbye as well. All right, see you in the next one.